Yeah, and thanks everyone for joining. We're super excited to share a panel presentation on high school adoption of data science, and really more broadly K-12 education. So I'll give quick intros of everyone in the panel, just kind of describe the structure, and then we'll jump right into Joe's presentation as the first one up. So my name is Zarek Drozda. I'm a data science fellow at the U.S. Department of Education. I'll serve as the moderator of the event. We'll have 3 presentations on various data science high school programs, including Joe's work at Stanford and creating new data science materials there, Taylor's work at NCSSM, piloting a data aid adoption, and then Rob's work in developing and piloting the IDS curriculum in really a number of schools over the past couple of years. Well, each presentation will be about 15 minutes. Then I'll have a couple of pre-written questions for the panel to start the discussion, and then we'll transition to audience Q&A. So there'll be lots of opportunities for engagement with everyone, and I'll be sure to help facilitate the Q&A discussion at the end by reading off questions in the chat for the panelists. But with that, I can give a really fast 1-2 minute overview of data science in K-12, and I think it's really it's obviously been gaining momentum in higher education for the past 5 years, and part a lot because of Eric's work in the data aid team here at Berkeley. I think in K-12 the momentum has just been starting to really ratchet up, and I think that a lot of the people on this panel are probably partially to blame for a lot of that momentum. But I think it's really gaining a lot of energy, and we'll continue to see it scale, hopefully over the next several years. My role at the department in the short term will be helping support the field as it's emerging, helping the department understand kind of the main barriers and issues for data science in K-12, understanding how we can facilitate more research and evaluation in the space. And also just creating more awareness and public engagement strategies. And so that's kind of how I fit into this piece. But maybe with that, I'll turn it over to Jo for her first presentation on all the work that her team is doing at Stanford.
Thank you, Zarek. I am going to start sharing some slides. And I thought I would begin talking today, before I get to what we're doing at Stanford to prepare data science materials, with just a bit of background about how important this initiative is. I run the center, co-founded this center at Stanford, if you'd like to see more and go back to this. But we have been teaching the content of high school courses since 1892. And the mathematics in high schools has really not changed since then. Until now, we're actually seeing changes in high school mathematics. So it's pretty exciting. I'm one of 5 writers of a new framework for the state of California in mathematics, and we're centralizing data science across the grades, not only in high school, but really from the really early years. We're setting out a vision of high school that includes a lot more options for students, including data science. And we were hugely helped, thanks to the work of Rob, Gould, and others, by a change in the California system of colleges, announcing to high schools that data science can be taken as an alternative to Algebra 2, can lead to statistics, and is a really valid pathway for students. This is amazing news, partly because we've really only had one mathematics pathway for generations that has dominated admissions. And that pathway is deeply inequitable. In most high schools, you have to be advanced in middle school to get to that calculus course. And that has set up a whole system of tracking of inequities in many districts. It's decided in 6th grade whether you'll get to calculus based on test scores from 4th grade. So clearly we needed to change that system, and very excited about data science as a high school option, because it can be rolled out as an equitable option for students. They don't have to be advanced in middle school to get there. They don't have to have done well in algebra or geometry. It lends itself really to a project-based approach, which we know engages many more students and is much more appealing for a range of students. I thought you might be interested in a study we recently did. There's a competition that goes on in colleges and high schools that's basically a data science experience. Students are in teams of 3 for 3 days analyzing problems with data. 67% of the students in this competition say it changes their future. And what I wanted to share was everybody thinks mathematics competitions are really good for men. And we have had a history of real huge inequities in who does well and who chooses to do maths competitions. But in this one, which is data science based, 47% of the students are women and 47% of the winners are women. So very excited about the equitable implications of data science. I love the way it's communicated at the moment, that unlike mathematics, which has been communicated over the years in very exclusive ways, data science is really communicated as anybody can become a data scientist. And we love that. We also should be asking questions about, the mathematics that's in high schools now. It's very heavily based on algebra and geometry. And I got involved with really questioning this content in deeper ways when I got a call from Steve Levitt, who's an economist at the University of Chicago, and said, will you help me try and change high school maths? And so I was very enthusiastic about helping, and an advocacy group was set up. This was a year ago now, and a lot has happened to bring data science into high school. The risk people, Zarek and others, put out a survey on their website asking people, what maths do you use in your daily life? And what we're displaying here is the most commonly answered responses of daily and never. And you can see that there's a lot of mathematics that people don't really think they use, yet the mathematics of data science is very heavily used. So we're asking these questions. We had a great meeting back in February. You can see a Stanford press release of this meeting where a group of people came together, mathematicians. Conrad Wolfram flew over from England, data scientists, policymakers, to really think about this, as well as the UCs, who are actually getting Stanford change in their admission statement to value data science pathways. So a lot happening, great interest from the press, as you can see there. Many states, not just California, are making this change. And you can see there the states that are welcoming data science in high school as a preparation for college. I think over the next year or so, we're going to see all of those states light up. So my center at Stanford, which is called YouCubed, we've developed a lot of resources, a new online class for teachers so that they can learn the ideas of data science, lessons, and a high school course, which I know is what people are interested in today. We're going to hear about a few high school courses. The one we've developed, we partnered with Google, so the tools inside it are freely available for schools, and Tableau, which is a lovely data visualization tool. And we envisage students who take the course developing a kind of portfolio of their work in Tableau that they can share with colleges and with employers. We have a great advisory board of academics as well as data scientists who are working in industry. And our course is 8 project-based units where students get to be data scientists and really dig into the mathematics of data science. We are very happy that this is a course that students can have agency, where they can ask their own questions and investigate local data sets from their own communities that will really make them feel that they can help their own communities. There's a lot of important technical learning that students who take the course will leave with some very important computational knowledge. And the mathematical knowledge of high school, of data science in high school, is really very interesting. Obviously, a lot of statistics, but some geometry, modeling, definitely computational thinking, even some linear algebra. In my conversations at Stanford and other places, to have data science be recognized, I get a lot of this question: is it rigorous enough? I actually really dislike that word rigor. And in the California Maths Framework, we've been trying to reshape the way people think about rigor. Rigor is not about memorizing lots of procedures and being able to reproduce them. It's really being able to analyze novel situations in the world and flexibly apply methods. So just to wrap up, lots of interest in the data talks we have on our website, where people can just start lessons with helping kids understand what data representations really tell them. We know that many students in the school system are not able to analyze data. They're very vulnerable to the misinformation that they see on social media. And I love this project that happened where designers in the UK and in the US shared with each other, you probably know this project, shared with each other data from their lives each week. I just wanted to share that I gave this as a sort of assignment to my Stanford undergrads and asked them to collect data on their lives, and then they made these data representations. So I mean, I love the creative visualizations that are enabled in data science. We're past the days of bar graphs and line graphs being the only data representation we can use. So that's all I was going to share, and happy to answer questions in the chat, and looking forward to hearing about the other data courses from my colleagues here.
Thank you so much, Joe. And if folks have questions in the chat, you're following Joe's presentation, please feel free to drop it there. But really appreciate that kind of the fast overview on the programming and all the efforts that you've led in this space over the past couple of years. Next up, I think we have a presentation from Taylor on piloting data 8 adoption in a high school setting. So I think especially relevant for a lot of the audience here. I'd love to hear how the curriculum developed at Berkeley is being adopted in high schools.
Great, thanks, Zarek. While I'm getting my slides up and running here, I just wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity. I was at the second one of these conferences that was done 2 years ago, the last one that was in person. And I think it was me and one other high school teacher now. And now I look down the people list and there's so many more high school teachers here in math and science. And it makes me really excited to see more of us. And then I have to just mention that I see some high school teachers I actually know from following their blogs online. It's just amazing to see all of us here together. I'm excited to see what we can do when we put our minds to it. So I am going to talk a little bit about today, the adaptation of Data 8 that we've been running at the North Carolina School of Science and Mathematics. So I'm Taylor Gibson. I'm the Dean of the Mathematics Department here at NCSSM. And this has been kind of my pet project now for several years, and I'm really excited to share how it's been going. So I want to talk to you just a little bit about the school, because I think we are just N=1. We are just one school. We're a very specific school. So I don't want to overgeneralize the results of what I'm going to be talking about and think that they might apply to any school here in the US or across the world. But I hope that if you're here, you're interested in possibly thinking about how you could implement data science curriculum at your school. So I thought I would share a little bit about our planning process, what we've done, and where we hope to go. And the hope of that is that you'll learn something a little bit about how you can take this and do it at your school as well. So our school is here in North Carolina. We've been around since 1980, and we're centered here in Durham, North Carolina. So a lot of access to kind of research schools. We work a lot with Duke and UNC and NC State and NCA&T and all sorts of schools in the area. It's been a great process for us. We actually are part of the UNC system. We're a residential school. We only serve juniors and seniors, and we take students from all over the state. So they apply, but it's free to attend, free room, free board, free tuition. Students have no cost to attend. And we do take equal number of students from every congressional district in the state, hoping to ensure that this is a resource for all citizens of North Carolina, not just students from a particular area or background. We also have a robust online program which serves another 400 students who choose to stay at their home high school but want to take additional coursework with us. And we serve over 200 students every year who kind of join us through courses via video conference. We call those open enrollment courses. And those are students who are in their home high school. They don't have to apply. We just have those one-off partnerships with school districts or schools to offer coursework to them that they can't offer themselves. And we do have a second campus that's about to open fall 2022, which will serve 300 more students in the western part of the state. And that campus has made the choice to center their curriculum around data science and data science education. So we'll talk more about that in a little bit. All that to say, we serve about 1,500 students once that campus is open. So even though we are high school, we have the opportunity to serve quite a lot of students every year. And it's really a great opportunity and really a tremendous public good for the people of North Carolina. So why do we choose data science and to teach that at NCSSM? I'm glad I followed Jo because she did a great job kind of, I think, explaining why data science is so important. And I have to credit, I was a little afraid when I saw Jo was going to be on the panel because part of the major reasons I wanted to bring data science to NCSSM is because I followed Dr. Boaler's work and I follow Levitt's work from Freakonomics. So it's a little imposter syndrome, but I'm happy to hear that she did such a great job kind of laying the groundwork because now I don't have to, so I can build off of that. So everything Jo said, I'll just pretend I said that again. But then also the other big reason is that our students are asking for it. Because our students come in with a fair amount of academic preparation before they enroll at our school, they've already usually completed through or around pre-calculus by the time they're either starting with us as juniors or definitely by the time they end their junior year. And more and more of them are trying to get into statistics and data science. Even this year, we're just starting to enroll our upcoming junior class. And I've had so many students, and I've never seen this in years before, saying, I don't want to take calculus when I come. I want to take AP stats. I want to take this data science course. And you have to have the conversation, sit them down and say, are you sure? There might be other implications, but I support it. I just want you to think through everything. And they're like, yep, totally already thought through that. I'm excited to get into this. And to me, that just speaks to this shift that Jo mentioned, I think, not only in us as educators, but students are picking up at it as well. There's a big buzz, and I think rightfully so, and we wanted to be able to offer that to our students. So in addition to just kind of demand, I think the GAZE 2 was a big motivator for me personally when thinking about data science. So you read through that document, the opening paragraph here is really what struck me. The ultimate goal of that report is to promote statistical literacy that enables us to meet our responsibilities as citizens. And I think it's right in our school's mission statement that we are trying to cultivate future leaders and global citizens. So I think that just jumped out, and well, we've got to do more with our statistics education. And then that report also recognizes that modern statistical practice is intertwined with technology. I think for so long, even at what I would consider our school very cutting edge, a lot of our statistics curriculum was very traditional. And I think we were not yet equipped to kind of use the technology that's available to fully investigate all that's out there. So we had a couple of stepping stones on the way. We adopted a new stats textbook, the Lock 5 stats textbook, which does a lot more with kind of simulation and using technology to do that. But we knew it wasn't enough. We know that students need to get in there and write their own code instead of only relying on applets. So we wanted to really push the boundary there. We also looked at the annual review of stats and its applications published in 2017. And I looked at these learning outcomes for a program in undergraduate data science. And these are things, again, that we were either already doing or wish we could do better at our school. So I won't read them all off, but for me, we wanted to make sure that we had some responsibility and ethics somewhere in our program. Me and the math department wanted to make sure we were doing our job with the mathematical foundations and model building, and the computational statistical thinking we'd already started to do, but it just seemed like a really great opportunity to bring it all together. And that's right around the time where I went to the first one of these workshops and I saw what the folks at Berkeley were doing with Data 8. And I was like, I bet you we could pull that off. So we started conversations with the whole team and started to build up the resources needed to do that. At that time, I was just a faculty member. I didn't have to worry about how to pay the bills for any of this, but I've since moved into administration, and now it's my job to worry about, can we afford to bring a new program? And one thing that I think is great about data science, if you're trying to sell it to your school, is that there are so many free resources, not just for computation, but also for curriculum. There's so many choices out there. So I'm going to talk about, we did Data 8. That was the right choice for us, but there are many other curriculum choices out there. And what I love about data science is that unlike other disciplines where they've maybe been rooted in tradition or a certain way of doing things for so long. Data science is almost like getting to press the reset button, a clean slate. And I think we get to define that culture. And what I've seen so far from the culture of data science and data science education is that we give as much away as we can. And that is online textbooks, that is assessments, it is tools, you name it. People give all this away, which makes it, one, really great to start up a new program. You don't need a lot of funding for it. You need a little, but you don't need a ton. But it also just creates this culture of communication and sharing, which I think is just part about being a data scientist, is telling the story that the data kind of lays out for you. So what have we done so far? We wanted to make a whole school approach at this, and this is kind of started here and there all over different times, but this is kind of where we are so far, is that in the math department, we offer 2 courses, one modeled after data 8, no prerequisite for our students, anybody can take it. And then for those students who complete that can go on to take our advanced data science course, which is somewhat modeled after data 100. We don't want our students to have to take calculus or necessarily even a linear algebra course beforehand. So we have to adapt that and modify that a little bit. But we kind of cover some of those same major topics in there. Our engineering and computer science department is able to offer a course on databases and one on machine learning. Our humanities department has a course called Digital Humanities, where that's co-taught between a scientist and a history teacher, and they dig into looking at historical data and kind of putting that in context of the time. It's really cool. And then an ethics course in AI. I think that was a really big component for us, is that we know that it's not just enough to show students how to work with data, but also ask the hard questions about, what is an okay use for somebody's data and what isn't an okay use. So that ethics course is I think, a really important piece of the puzzle. And then our science department actually was leading the way on this. They've been doing more computational science for years, partly because of our online program. If students can't come to campus, it's really hard to do a physical chemistry lab with them. So utilizing computational resources to do those investigations has been a long staple of the science department. So altogether, we've got a nice kind of complement of courses where students can take different pathways to kind of scratch that data itch in a couple of different ways. And we kind of built that all on a stack of Jupyter notebooks with Python. We use Gradescope and AutoGrader to do a lot of the assessment to kind of keep the grading time low, especially for bigger courses when they're starting out. We don't have necessarily as many teachers as we would like to teach all of these. I'll touch on that in a moment. But trying to kind of ease the grading where we can makes it so we can offer it to more students. We were able to, in this first year of doing it for these data science courses, we just finished our first year. We had almost 70 students, which doesn't sound like a lot, but that's 10% of our student body opted to take it in the first year, which was amazing. We just started doing course requests for next year. So out of our 300 and some odd new students, we've already got 21 of them who said they want to take data science next year, which is great. And about a third or so of those students who took our foundations course, actually about half of them, because this was in the second semester, half of the first semester data science students in the foundation course went on to take the advanced one in the second semester. So I think that, to me, that just demonstrates there is interest there is demand. We're not just doing this and thinking it's going to be great and then nobody shows up. It's crickets. Like, students are signing up. We also felt it was really important, beyond just coursework, to expose students to people who do this for a living. So we put together a data science speaker series once a month in the fall, because we wanted students to see themselves in data science. So we brought in people from academia, we brought people from industry, and we offered a bunch of these different opportunities for students to hear these professionals' path to get to where they are. And to a T, almost all of them said, well, this isn't what I thought I was going to do. I started here and then I went there and then we landed this way. And that was great, because I think it's great for students who are starting out to realize there's not just one way to be a data scientist. There's not just one way to work with data. Everybody is going to have to work with data. And I think the more walks of life that you can show that highlight that for your students, the better. And I was surprised. Maybe it was just the age of COVID and Zoom, but I could just call up somebody and they're like, sure, yeah, I'll do it. I got people from all over that I never thought would come and talk to high school kids. But I think everybody recognizes that starting when they're in high school is the way to kind of promote it early and get kids where you need to get them. So people inherently saw the value in this type of series. So where do we want to go next? Next year, this is the one thing we know for sure. A group of students who took this coursework with us last year started up a chapter of the Code for Charity Organization student chapter, and they want to utilize the skills that they learned in these courses to do public good. They want to find a local organization here in Durham to work with and help them solve kind of a messy data-related problem. So like actually go out and collect the data, have to clean the data, and solve a real-world problem. Unlike the kind of pseudo real world problems that we give them in class. They use that, they see that as an opportunity to learn some of the other skills that we haven't found a place yet to teach them in our course, like how to work as a team. Not everybody has to be an expert on the same thing. How could you pull in that student who took a web development course, the kid who took the data science course, put them together to work on a project? Because I think, again, kind of teaching them those other skills that aren't math and statistics are still really valuable for them to see how that works. We want to expand the opportunity to our students in our online program and to our partner schools next year. That's already decided as well. So I think that'll be really telling to see how different modalities might react to this type of curriculum. And then talking a lot, I went to the talk earlier this week on Data 6, thinking about building on-ramps to our foundations course so more students feel like they should be in that course. It can still seem intimidating with the title like data science, that, oh, that's not for me. That's for like the smart kids or something. No, it is for everybody, and don't try and like categorize it that way. So we want to find ways to get students in the door. Because I think once they're in the door, they're not going anywhere. They're going to love it. They're going to stay. But I think we just have to find more ways to get them in the door. And I already mentioned this earlier. Our new campus will have a focus, and we're really excited about maybe for having that be a common experience for all incoming juniors in that program, because that just opens so many doors. If you know every kid in the building has had a course like Data 8, you can do so many other interesting things in the courses that follow. And we can't really quite do that yet because we don't know every student has had it. So we're excited to see where that takes us in the next few years. So, and this is my last thought, and I know we're going to talk more about this in the Q&A part, but this might seem obvious, but I'll have to say it anyways, that if we want to teach data science in high schools, we need teachers that know how to teach data science. And it has been a struggle. Not that it's just hard to recruit, because right now, if you want to hire somebody who already knows a lot about data science to come teach high school, you're going to have a really hard time finding them and then being able to pay them enough to come and teach at your high school. So we tried to do that once or twice with limited success. So instead, we turned our focus inwards. That's how we've solved this problem, is by sending teachers to workshops like this, co-teaching a course, helping each other out. I can't say we all got it right the first time. I'm probably guilty of getting it wrong the most, but there's a desire there, and we have got a great team who are willing to help each other through it. So we freed up 2 faculty this past spring to sit in on some data science coursework, and now they're going to be teaching it in the fall. We were very fortunate to have that free time. I know not every school has that luxury, but I think trying to grow your own is really kind of where we are. I don't know if that's really scalable. So we need to rethink really hard about how do we train the next generation of teachers who can teach not just the stats, but all of these other tools that kind of come along with it. When I went through my math ed program, I didn't know what GitHub was. I didn't know about Python. And I learned a lot about that over the last few years, but we need to start earlier so that teachers are better prepared. So I think that's it for me. Thank you so much. I look forward to talking to y'all more in the Q&A.
Thanks so much, Taylor. I think we had one question in the chat, maybe kind of specific to your presentation, and then we'll piggyback and hit the others after everyone's gone. But I think Karen asked, or she commented that your school's curriculum almost looks like an undergrad sequence with all the plethora of course offerings, which I think is super impressive. And I think she was curious, what type of background the students have when they're coming into your school, and what are some of their outcomes after going through such a expansive sequence.
Sure. So our students, they really run the gamut. So like we have some students who come in, we're an integrated math sequence here in North Carolina. So like a non-accelerated student would take Math 1 their 9th grade year, Math 2 their 10th grade year. And we've got, probably a good number of students who come in, that's all that they've taken. Maybe their school district doesn't allow for acceleration. We can argue whether that's good or bad later, but that's just the way it is. But then we also have students who come in on the other end, where by the time they come to us as 11th graders, they've already finished a sequence in calculus and taken a course at the local community college in differential equations and multivariable. We have all of those kids in the same data science course because it doesn't really draw from any of those specific content areas. And I think that is actually pretty cool. That's a pretty rare opportunity. Now, speaking more broadly about kind of the outcomes of our students, again, they really run the gamut, but we try really hard to make sure that every student who comes in the door has some of these types of like really interesting and engaging curriculum to take, regardless of their background. So we try and make sure that if you're a student who comes in and they've only had Math 2 or Math 3, you're going to have the opportunity to take data science as much as the other kids. Same for our science courses, same for our humanities and all of our other stuff. Every student, if that's what they're interested in, will have the opportunity to take every course in our books. And it's just about making sure that we properly support the students to achieve those goals. We've got a lot of ways that we do that in the math department, using like co-requisite courses and things of that nature to support students where they need it. And we have similar programs kind of across the campus.
Thanks for sharing. And then I think one more question, maybe kind of specific to what you all did. Karen was also wondering what courses were removed, if any, to make room for either data science or all the other courses, relative to the traditional math or science content.
So we didn't remove any courses from our catalog, but what I am seeing happening is just maybe offering fewer sections of some courses and offering in place of that data science. So it's possible that somewhere down the road that, we make this robust enough where students aren't really asking to take AP stats anymore, and they would rather take a course in data science or a sequence in data science. And if that's the case, that's fine. I think we can, in some sense, let the students vote with their enrollments. If they're not requesting courses anymore because they've got all these choices, then we kind of use it as an opportunity to reevaluate. We're really fortunate that we have the freedom and flexibility to do that. I've worked at a lot of schools where that's not the case. We're teaching math 1, 2, 3, 4 pre-calculus, and that's it. Have a good day. And I think I'm really fortunate to be in a place where faculty can propose a course, develop the course, and we can offer that course.
Awesome. Great. I saw a few more questions in the chat, like Vishal.
I can answer some of these in the Q&A so we can move on to Rob.
Yeah, that sounds perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, so why don't we kick it over to Rob now to share more about the Introduction to Data Science program and the GACE 2 report and all the other things you work on data related.
All right, thank you. So yeah, I'm going to mostly talk about the Introduction to Data Science course. Let me just check. Everyone can see the screen, right, Zarek?
Yeah, crystal clear.
Yeah, so the URL there, introdatascience.org, has all of our materials. As Taylor was saying, a lot of this is free. It's not without cost. I mean, it was very generously paid for by the National Science Foundation. But please look at this website where we have everything you need to get started. I thought a nice way of just kind of framing this discussion, rather than going through the curriculum or anything, would be just to talk about some of the lessons that I've learned, so that if in your leisure time you want to create your own high school data science course, you can benefit from our experiences. Before that, though, just a little bit of context. And Joe, laid this all out much better than I could, but starting with how our project came to be, we were funded by an NSF grant in 2012, and it was a partnership between the Department of Statistics, where I'm at, the Department of Computer Science, and the School of Education, all at UCLA. But really importantly, a collaboration with both teachers and administrators at LAUSD. All school districts are problematic in their own unique ways. This was a very challenging school district to work with for many reasons, but also a really inspiring district to work with because it had many really creative, inspired teachers and administrators and some great students as well. We began the IDS developing it in about 2013, and it was released in, I think, 14 or 15. And just at the time the Common Core was adopted in California, and that was kind of put the wind in our sails, because before that, the math curriculum was very much, if this is Tuesday, it must be quadratic equations. And the Common Core curriculum allowed a lot more flexibility and opened up the door for these non-traditional courses as far as the math goes. But let me talk a little bit about the vision, because I know when we're talking to university people, a data science course is seen as either a GE course or a course as a preparation for majors. We are not talking, when we're talking about high school data science, our vision is not about preparing future data scientists. It's not even about preparing future college students. Many of our students may not go to college, and one of the successes of our program has been that we've pushed more in that direction, allowed more to go. But we're just talking about data science for everyone. Our vision is that data science is both a civic responsibility and a civil right, that students in a data-driven culture like ours have the right to learn more about data science and the right to exercise their views through in working with data, but they also have a civic responsibility. And I think, we could all agree the last few months have shown us many ways, both positive and negative, why we need stronger data acumen. I like that term from the National Academy. So, we're really about developing data acumen for everyone. The last little bit of promotion, self-promotional sorts of things. So we started partnering with LA Unified, and we've since expanded. We now are partnering with about 15 school districts and a few state departments of education. And I think, as of the end of this year, we've taught about 15,000 students. So we've been really excited by the interest in data science among the high schools. So let me just talk about 7 lessons that I've learned. The first, I don't really need to go into much detail. Thank you, Taylor, you went into this. But it's really important if you're designing a curriculum to build on the known research and how students learn to think about data. And there is about 20 to 30 years worth of literature on this, even more if you go back to the more mathematical thinking about probability. The guidelines for assessment, instruction, and statistics education, which you can find at amstat.org/education. There's a college report and a pre-K through 12 report. Advise you to read them both. They incorporate this kind of body of research in a set of guidelines that try to lay out through K through 12 what students should learn. And this most recent revision, which was just published last year, just a few months ago actually, incorporates a lot of modern data science concepts. So no need to reinvent the wheel. And most important, we don't want to fall into the same pitfalls that those who've come before us have identified. So that's a really important report I'd like to draw to your attention. The second thing we learned, and frankly, we learned the hard way, we are not concerned with teaching tools or methods, and nor should we be. What we want to teach is a method of problem solving, a strategic approach, a holistic way of thinking and solving problems with data. So we call ours the data cycle. This is based on the Gaze report. They called it the 4 steps of the statistical investigative process, which is a mouthful. And it in turn is based on some empirical work done by researchers in New Zealand, Chris Wilde and Maxine Fancook. They call theirs the PPDAC cycle, which stands for plan, prepare, data, analyze, communicate. Another mouthful. We like the data cycle since it's much shorter. It's not meant to be followed religiously. It's meant to be a guideline, but again, to encourage students to be thinking about thinking, kind of a metacognitive sort of tool, and to emphasize that it's not about learning a method and applying that method. It's about solving a problem and bringing in the data and the tools you need to solve the problem. I can go into more detail in questions if you want, but that's the gist of this, is to emphasize thinking and de-emphasize, tools, although tools are learned, of course. The third lesson we learned is kind of what I would like to call the fundamental theorem or fundamental thought. I'm still kind of trying to find a name for this. Again, Chris Wilde and Maxine Fancook played a hand in this. And it's this idea that looking at the world using data is like looking through a window with ripples in the glass. What I see is not quite the way it really is. This is a profound thought with profound consequences and implications, but it's really important that students learn that when they're looking at visualizations, what they're seeing is not exactly the way the process works. There's some distortion that's gone on through that, and it's driven by the process, but they need to be aware of their uncertainty in their conclusions. And one big part of IDS is not to formalize that uncertainty with probability statements like we would in AP stats, but to at least make them aware of that uncertainty and the source of that uncertainty. So uncertainty may come from random variations in the data collection process, or it may come from the fact that you're studying a multivariable system, but you only see 3 or 4 of those variables. And so there may be bias introduced that could be quite severe. So a lot to unpack here, but at the very least, we hope to establish some awareness of this distortion that happens when we view data. Number 4 is we've had a lot of success relying on data collection activities. And it's really important, I think, that those activities not only include a variety of data types like photos and sounds and words and numbers, but also different methods. And so we've used something that was our founding principal investigator, Deborah Estrin, was at UCLA. She's a computer scientist, and she and her team developed this paradigm of participatory sensing. And at the basic level, students are using mobile devices to collect data. But at the broader level, this paradigm is set up so that students create these communities, the most basic community being the classroom, that together decides on problems that they want to tackle, and together collects data about these issues and then shares the analysis. So it's kind of this self-enclosed classroom unit that lets students collect, share data and analyses. And that's been a really important tool in helping students kind of develop some data acumen and some personal experiences with what goes right and what goes wrong when collecting data. Number 5 is develop coding and programming. And I know I'm preaching to a choir here at the Data 8 group, but we've been using R through RStudio, in particular wrapped around the Mobilize-R package. The Mobilize-R package is based on the Mosaic package, Nick Horton and Randy Prime and Danny Kaplan. And basically it unifies the syntax in a way that kind of emphasizes model building and treats the unit of analysis as kind of a model of our relationship, a model of how we see the data relating to each other. We had a reviewer, Erica Heinzman, do it kind of as an external study. She found that students identified the coding experience using these terms: helpful, productive, efficient, empowering. What's interesting is they almost always, unprompted, contrasted this with their math class and said coding was really helpful as opposed to when I took Algebra 2 or something along those lines. And there are other benefits. I mean, one is that students just seem to understand code better as a description than mathematical notation, in part, I think, because it's interactive, and in part because it tells them when they're wrong. Not always, but at least they know that they have a syntactically correct statement that they're saying. But also it really helps teach this important lesson of reproducibility and communications within workflows and those sorts of issues. So coding, we think, is really important. Number 6 is pedagogy, and I'm kind of building on Jo's work and what she said here. I mean, our pedagogy is we have no lectures. Data science is a collaborative activity, and so our data science learning is collaborative. Data science is an active activity. Students are doing things. They're not just reading and consuming, they are doing and producing. So the learning is active and producing. But as Jo was talking about, it's really important that this be student-centered. One of our primary learning outcomes is for students to be able to investigate issues that are meaningful to them. And so that's kind of mirrored in every lesson. Every student develops their own ideas and hypotheses. They work in groups, they share it with the class. And the teacher's role is to kind of guide their naive wonderings into a more formal and a more advanced set of knowledge that can then carry over to the next lesson. So it's a different role from the teacher than has traditionally been seen in math classes. And fortunately, this role is not so unusual anymore among math teachers, but there's still a ways to go. The last lesson is related to that, and that's professional development. So again, let me, emphasize what Taylor was saying. We are situated, our course has been situated in California within the math curriculum, and there are many good reasons for that. But there are some not so good reasons. And one reason is that the content is almost completely known to teachers. And there are individual exceptions. And in fact, among our early adopters, we had a couple of engineers and people who were computer science majors as teachers. So it's not totally unfamiliar, but as a whole it is. And this is a surprise to many administrators who think, well, it's a math topic. These are math teachers. Surely they had a stats class or a data science class or a programming class. And the answer is no. It's very easy to get a math credential without doing any of these. And if you have taken a statistics class, it's quite likely to have been a mathematically statistical class where you proved which estimators were biased and unbiased and sufficient, and but you didn't learn about analyzing data. So professional development is extraordinarily needed to be able to teach the content. It's also worth pointing out that, especially among math teachers, the whole thought process is foreign and new. So math is predominantly deductive, not completely, but predominantly, and that's the problem-solving approach that's valued. And math teachers, rightly so, like to teach students to appreciate the beauty of the abstraction of math. And data science, on the other hand, is predominantly inferential. And that's a way of thinking that some math people find not just foreign, but sometimes just ill-advised. So there's a real kind of cultural shift is needed for many teachers to be able to adapt a data science curriculum. The other thing is, when we're talking about student-driven education, conversations can very quickly and in surprising and unexpected ways become either very personal or very political. And teachers need to be prepared for that. This does not happen when you're talking about factoring or again, solving the quadratic equation. There are very few instances for politics to intervene, but it does happen in even mundane context-driven situations. And so it's really important for teachers to have practice being able to handle this. And again, I mean, if we were working with social science teachers, this may be less of an issue, but with math and science teachers, although even less with science teachers, this is an issue that we need to work through. And finally, one of our values is equity in education, and I'm sure it's a value. I know it's a value I share with our other panelists. But equitable education means that teachers need to be able to handle these challenging situations in a way that doesn't alienate or isolate students or groups of students, even if they're not in that classroom. So there's a lot to unpack here. I'll just add that we initially did 11 days of full days of professional development, and we've had to cut that back to 9. We didn't think 11 was enough and 9 is not enough. For second years, we offer an optional advanced data science course, but there's really just a lot to cover in this course. And I haven't talked about the curriculum, but in the context of professional development, for example, many of our teachers are familiar with regression, but especially if they're math teachers, they sometimes expect all of the points to fall on the straight line. But also they're not familiar with using regression in a prediction context. And so that's something that's new to them. We also, talk about classification regression trees. That's almost always completely new. So there's just a lot of content. There's a lot of technology. There's a whole new student-driven pedagogy. And there's this issue of equity that really has to be handled carefully and has to happen through practice. So can't emphasize enough how important professional development is in this area. And since we're speaking to many people who are data scientists or college and university faculty, this is a real area of need that you can get involved in and assist with, because again, it's just greatly needed. So I'll conclude there. And again, there's the website if you want to know or download more. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you to all the panelists. Rob, I think there's one IDS specific question I wanted to pick up on, and then we'll kind of go to the general Q&A. But I think some folks were asking if you had any advice or input for those adopting IDS to Python or Jupyter or other data science software. I know you all built the curriculum primarily around R.
Yeah, so we built the I haven't seen the questions yet, but I mean, we like R. I'm agnostic as to what's programs learned. I mean, again, what we're teaching is an approach to critically and constructively making sense of the world through data, and the software you use can help or hinder that in ways. And frankly, I don't think research-wise we understand yet, especially at the beginning levels, how the software enhances or detracts from learning. I think I saw Amelia McNamara on this list, and she's done some great research in this area about how software tools can enhance learning. We like R because R was developed by as a tool for analyzing data and thinking about data. Although we're not trying to teach future data scientists in particular, it's still the case that R is a tool that many data scientists use to implement data theory into practice, and for that reason, it's a professional introduction. I will say the students really appreciate the fact that they're using a professional programming language. That's something that they say that they value again to us. So I'm agnostic as to which one you choose, but we have our own reasons for choosing and enjoying the use of R.
Awesome, thank you. And hopefully that was helpful. But yeah, thank you all so much. So now we'll kind of transition into the general Q&A for the whole panel. The chat and the Q&A were on fire during the presentation, so there's a lot to get through. We have about 30 minutes and some change to go over a lot of the questions, so I'll try to thread those in somewhat coherently. I think maybe a good place to start is kind of where you left off in your presentation, Rob, and maybe we can dig into this question around teacher PD a little bit more. I think in particular, Boyan had a question about what was the best way to adopt your high school data science course in a way that's basically attractive to both pre-service and in-service math teachers. So I think there's a question there maybe around trying to approach mathematics teachers in particular, which I think you all have a lot of probably more detail to add. And then I think there's a secondary question of, okay, well, what if we expand to other subjects outside of math and try to pull in social studies or biology and teachers in more interdisciplinary domains?
Oh, that's a really big question. I'm not quite sure how to tackle it. Joe is more the expert here. I would say, though, we're really what I like about this question is it emphasizes that we're talking about a seismic shift. We're not talking about just adding a new flavor of Algebra 2 to the curriculum and teachers need to go online and read a little bit of material. We're really talking about changing the way in-service and pre-service is structured. And we're also talking about changes, and this is just teacher preparation. We're talking about changes in the math and statistics and data science curriculum to prepare more teachers along these ways. And I'd also add, we're talking about big changes in universities to accept students who are not coming through the calculus pathway, but coming through the data science pathway. So this is a work in progress.
Well, yeah, I just concur with Rob's statements. I know when I present to high school teachers, which I've been doing quite a lot recently, lot of fear that they cannot let go of preparing kids to go into calculus. So we really need these conversations with the colleges. It's extremely important. I mean, we know that students have been taking, even before data science, statistics and progressing into colleges without any problems at all. But so the teachers need a lot of help with that, as well as all the pedagogical help that Rob set out. I loved your points, Rob, about helping teachers deal with the possibly political questions that come up. A lot of our projects in our data science course at Stanford are based around the environment, around issues of housing and poverty. And right now, anything that's even vaguely got a label of equity is being attacked by organized groups. So that's an area we really need to think about as we go forward in data science. And as you say, maths teachers are probably less comfortable with those discussions than many other. I love the idea of having teachers from different subjects work together on data science courses. Yes, social studies are fantastic, and other subjects as well. So maybe that's a really good thing to think about going forward, is just getting teams of teachers to teach data science. I think that would really help.
I think the one thing that you touched on that really resonated with me is the idea from teachers, is that, and it comes in different ways. It's fear of not following the same path of trying to get students to calculus, but then it's also fear from them, like they've been teaching for 10, 20, 30 years. They know their content, they know their pedagogy, and to ask them to drastically change that is scary. I mean, I will admit, the first day I walked into my data science course this year, I was afraid. I felt like I have no right to be here. I don't have a background in data science. And I think that's going to be the biggest barrier, I think, is just getting over that fear that is going to come from changing that what's been the same for so long. And
right.
I don't know the way to do that. I think about this a lot. I do think, and I am biased because of my living in the math world at my school, but I think that the AP statistics is probably like the Trojan horse to try and get a foothold into schools, just because that seems safe and it's pretty widely adopted. And it's already, in my experience, offered to students who maybe otherwise teachers wouldn't feel would be successful in calculus. And I think that if we can kind of leverage all of that work that's already been done, that might take away a little bit of the fear. You're already going to have some content area expertise and some of the more statistical thinking, but I don't have a good answer for the more of the technology side about how do you get math teachers who are great at, I'll use Rob's example of factoring and solving the quadratic equation, but how do you get them, equally comfortable using even just like a spreadsheet? A lot of teachers don't have comfort with a spreadsheet. And going back to the earlier question about programming languages, a pivot table is a pivot table. It doesn't matter if you make it in Python, Google Sheets, Excel, R, it doesn't matter. It's how do you work with the data? And I think but the technology will be a big hurdle to get over to get our teachers ready to offer this type of coursework.
Right. And I love Gideon's point in the chat. He said there are lots of us who don't have that fear. We're ready to embrace this. And I think that's what we're going to see in this early rollout of data science. I mean, we have plenty of high school maths teachers who have been wanting to teach more relevant content and are willing to be flexible and to engage in more project-based work. And probably those are going to be the early adopters, as we say. And maybe that's really a good thing for data science.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that the people on this conference probably are less fearful than others. But I will add that, in our experience, we contract with districts, and then the districts would send teachers. And of course, there's always teachers in the professional developments who make it clear they don't want to be there. And anyone who's done professional development knows what that's like. And they fight you every step of the way. But we've always converted them, and we always hear from them. By the end of the year, they've had a great time. They've loved teaching the class. They tell us it's the first class they've ever taught. This is math again. No one has ever asked them, why are they learning this? And when are they ever going to use this? And it's the first class where many students have proposed ideas of their own. And we're at LAUSD, we're talking about some traditionally very underperforming students who've been inspired by this. So I think when you're talking to your colleagues who are fearful, you want to sell them on the end game. Because we have yet to have a teacher who's not enjoyed teaching the class.
And I think it's really key, Rob, that you mentioned the professional development. That is where we can get teachers to come on board, even the ones who are opposing it in the beginning. But this needs funding. This needs teachers being given time to learn about this. And So yeah, professional development and having them experience the data science units before they go off and teach them is really important.
I might ask one really quick follow-up question, to kind of speak to I think that a lot of the audience here, which is that if I'm a professor or an instructor in data science or statistics or CS at a higher education institution, how can I help K-12 teachers train up? And Rob, I think you touched on this a little bit at the end of your presentation, but just some quick, concrete suggestions I think would be really helpful.
Well, I mean, the easiest thing is just if your school is teaching a data science thing to offer, like Taylor was saying, to be a visitor in the classroom. If you're at a university and that professional development is happening there, to forcibly intrude and offer to help and get things. I mean, I am concerned about a kind of, I don't think we're in a position of concern, but I think the real issue is to make sure that there's validity in what's happening. The high school is seen as valid to people at the university and in the workplace and in the research place. So even though we're talking about data science for all, we do hope that produces a pipeline of data scientists. And so, that validity issue is really important, so especially because there's no AP course. I mean, for all of its faults of the AP stats curriculum, it does have that validity that it's modeled after, for better or worse, many college courses. So we have to be mindful of that.
Mm-hmm. And I would say we're running a professional development in August at Stanford for teachers who want to teach our data science course. I would love it if any data scientists come along or would be willing to help us, and reach out to me if you're in the Bay Area, because we're very happy to bring in any people who are working in this field to help us.
So offering PD, I think like one thing our school does, we're not a university, but we try and offer free professional development to high school teachers in math. We have not yet been able to do that for data science. I think that might be a goal for us in the next year or two, but I think any university that has faculty who have been teaching data science, particularly anything that's akin to what we've been talking about here today, whether that be IDS or Data 8 or anything like that, like bringing teachers in for a week and just having them learn some of the tools, learn some of the curricular ideas. It might not be enough for them to walk away and teach a course, but it's going to do a lot, I think, to kind of shift the mindset and see why it's important and get them excited. And that's just the first step. So I think we've seen success with that for some partner organizations and considering us as a partner in some of the grant opportunities. So maybe thinking about if you're applying for a grant and there's an outreach component or something like that, think about using that funding to work with teachers. I think that's something people in higher education can really help out with.
Thank you all. I think that's super helpful. I'll transition a bit now to kind of in the K-12 landscape. And I think, the obvious kind of elephant in the room is we're just emerging from, a global crisis and a crisis for education with, all the potential learning loss that COVID-19 generated during remote instruction. And I think there's, a lot of early evidence suggests that there's especially been significant learning loss in mathematics. The NAEP scores on math, from the department just released are definitely, showing the trend's not necessarily going in the right direction. So I think maybe a broad question for kind of K-12 is, why should we be doing data science now? Why is it, why is now the right time to start really investing in this? What's the urgency?
I can start, if you like, just by saying that data science is exactly what we need to be doing now. And if anything, the pandemic should have highlighted that for all of us, that, our screens were filled with data that we were expecting and hoping people to understand. And it also is really helpful, I think, when I hear about learning loss, I know that what people are talking about is, the very formal mathematics that is often very uninteresting to students, and trying to get your students to learn that sitting at home online has been probably impossible for many of us. I'm a parent and I speak personally with that, but data science is a whole different endeavor. It's so much more engaging for kids. And you can start in a data science course without background of algebra and geometry, really. It's a new kind of content that can give students a fresh start. And we're certainly communicating with our high school course that it's open to anyone. We know lots of kids have had very bad maths experiences, but could really come alive in a data science course and really engage with the content. So this is just what we need at this point in our education system, I think.
I would add to that. I mean, I emphasize that we learned a lot in the pandemic about how people sometimes well-intentioned misread and then misinterpret data, and how important it is, that people have a more solid foundation in analyzing data. But I'd also just add, the time for teaching data science isn't now, it was 2000. The 21st century is 20% over. And so it's time to start preparing students for the 22nd century and to get ahead on that. So, pandemic or not, we need to get moving.
I think that was a really helpful overview. I think there were also a number of questions in the chat about prerequisites for data science, and kind of how, where data science fits into the existing K-12 curriculum, whether it's in math or science. I know, folks asked about AP courses, or if there's examples of data science without tracking away from calculus. So I'm wondering if you all had a question, or some thoughts around prerequisites you'd want to expand on.
I just think it's so important that we try to have as few prerequisites as possible. I think if you look at the math content in like a foundational course, like any of the ones that have been discussed today, you don't need to have in-depth knowledge of higher in quotes level mathematics than just kind of what you already know when you walk in the door as a freshman or sophomore, just kind of computation, maybe even earlier than that. But it's about accessibility for me. I think the further you kick the can down the road and put up more barriers, you're doing the students a major disservice. I think a lot of us have already talked about how being able to work with and analyze data is really a civic responsibility. And if you are the gatekeeper to have access to that, then that's not really the right call. So would I love every student in my foundational data science course to know a little bit more about gradient descent? Sure, but that's just probably more for me than it is for them. And so you have to kind of step back from yourself a little bit and say, like, what are the big goals? And those big goals don't require really any knowledge of calculus, any advanced kind of trigonometry or anything like that. It's more critical thinking and some computation, and you can kind of plug the gaps along the way. Any of the missing pieces aren't so big that you're like, well, you really needed a whole course for this. And I think that is, I have been really encouraged from hearing both from Rob and Joe that their curriculums that they're working with are also aiming to have no prerequisites. We want these courses to be accessible to as many students as we can.
Mm-hmm. And I would add to that, I totally agree with what Taylor just said, and I would add that this can also, kids can take data science and calculus if they are so inclined to be, if they're really mathematically interested. It doesn't have to be a choice between them, and how fantastic to be qualified in both calculus and data science. So I see it as a course that's very, as we would call it, low floor, high ceiling. Mm-hmm. Anybody can take this content, but it goes to high levels, and so it's really, great in that way.
Yeah, I'll just add, I agree with everything. Our own course requires Algebra 1, but especially in the first couple of years, we got to kind of do a natural experiment because counselors didn't know where to send students, and so we had students at every level taking the class. And what we could see from our look at the data, and again, very not a rigorous study, but students who had geometry tended to do better than students who had Algebra 1. And after that, there didn't seem to be any additional benefit to being more sophisticated mathematically. I personally don't think it was the geometry. I think it was the age. I think the difference between being 15 and 16 years old makes a big difference. But a geometer told me, oh no, geometry is so visual and it probably helps students. And so, who knows? Yeah, I think I just wanted to add, based on what Joe was saying about calculus and data science is one of the dangers of situating ourselves in the math curriculum is it will force students to make that choice or make parents think that they have to make a choice. And I think we really have to fight about that. I mean, the reality is most students need both. Some students only need data science, but all students need both, I think. Or I mean, well, you know what I mean. All students need data science. Some students need both.
And there are plenty of people. I was actually talking to, I was on an ABC News show about the maths framework, which is causing a lot of controversy. And the interviewer said, you know, I was a political science major. I took calculus in high school, didn't like it, have never used it in my life, and would probably have been much better off taking a data science course. So certainly, I do worry too, though, as you were saying, Rob, that this may have people think, which one do I choose? And maybe later they needed calculus. But I think our universities need to be much more flexible. So I take data science and statistics in high school, and I later decide to be an engineer. Great, I can take calculus in college. But getting universities to have more flexibility is a job we need to take on, I think.
Thing I want to add that I always have to remind myself as a high school teacher is that learning doesn't end when they graduate high school. Get them up and get them excited about math and statistical learning and data science. That's going to pay dividends down the road once they graduate from high school. So I think forcing students to take classes that they don't really care that much about right now is a quick way to, I think, end that mathematical road very quickly. I think enticing them with courses that are not just fun for the sake of fun, but are fun because they're enriching and they see the applicability with some really good math in them is going to keep them on that path much longer. Right. So I think everything you said about both is the right way to think about it. But even if it does pull a few students away from calculus towards data science, it's very likely that it's going to keep them on the path longer, and it's eventually going to curve back around, and they're going to come back to calculus a little bit later. But yeah, I always just have to remember that they keep learning after they graduate and they're 18 years old. They're going to, hopefully, if we've done our job right, keep learning for the rest of their life. So just keep that in mind, I think.
And maybe a related question is, you know, how do you think we can use data science as an opportunity to create, to maybe reverse a lot of the inequity in STEM education, whether it's with these graduation barriers in mathematics, or it's just ensuring data science is equally accessible across all schools. You know, what do you think are steps that K-12 needs to be taking in that regard?
I can jump in and say it's going to help in two ways, hugely help. I just think the potential for tackling inequities is huge with data science. And one way is just the way calculus has been offered in high schools for generations is we have sorted kids into two pathways. You can go to calculus and you can't in 6th grade usually. And so at that point, when that sorting decision is made, we basically decide that most kids cannot get to calculus. That decision-making has been very racialized, been very gendered. So data science can change that. It does not require kids to be advanced in middle school. So even in that realm, it's going to make just a huge difference if we're offering a course to students. They thought they weren't math people. They thought they couldn't go into STEM, and then it turns out they really enjoy this class in data science. So, but then I think the content and the sort of project-based collaborative nature of data science, we also know is more appealing to diverse groups of kids. I shared a study that we did at Stanford showing that in a modeling data science competition that women were jumping in. It was an extremely diverse group of people, unlike things like the maths competitions, which have not looked like that at all. So I think there's just huge potential for having a much more diverse group of kids go forward into STEM.
It goes back to a comment I made earlier about data science is like a chance to press the reset button on history of math, of the history of math and math education, and that people view it as different, which is both a challenge, but in this case, I think there's a real benefit that we get to decide right now together how are we going to have this be going forward? And I think just being able to shed off that baggage that comes with calculus and that track that everything is now built to get you there, I think it allows a lot of opportunities that I'm excited to see how it goes. I don't know all the answers to get us there, but I think just the fact we get a clean slate means we have a much better shot than just trying to tweak around the edges of what we've already got.
Yeah, and just the one thing I'll add, I mean, that may not be obvious to people who aren't watching high school. I don't teach high school, but watching high school students learn, is they sometimes don't know they're learning data science. I mean, they're learning what stresses them out and what we have like a stress chill activity, and they think they're learning about themselves. I mean, I hope they are learning about themselves, but they don't see it as learning data science. They see it as, oh, I'm using these approaches to gain insight into my own life. And so teenagers, you know, if you want to figure out what they're interested in, they're often interested in themselves. And data science lets them study themselves, you know, and maybe not just in a narcissistic way, but also their friends or what they define as important to them. And that's, you know, what Joe is saying, that makes it relevant to everyone. So it has the potential to be a discipline that shouldn't say, oh, I'm not a computer person, I'm not going to go down that pathway, but I'm a person, and data science can be about studying people, and that's of interest to everyone, I think. So there's great potential there.
I think Brennan also had a kind of related question to scaling data science in an equitable way, which is would you have recommendations for incorporating DS curriculum in smaller high schools or areas in rural districts, especially that maybe have less tech access? I don't know if you all have any thoughts there on how to make sure we both have equity in terms of identities and also geography.
I think that's one of the biggest barriers still. I mean, there are schools without internet access. And if there aren't computers, I mean, this is a harder hurdle to climb. So, I don't yet have great advice, except that we should all be a little aspirational and should be looking to fill those gaps. There are approaches, to developing computational thinking without computers, but I mean, we can only go so far with that. So I think that is one of the true equity barriers, is the lack of internet and technology infrastructures in some schools.
Rural education is something we think a lot about at our school because so much of North Carolina is rural, and we have a lot of students who come from rural areas. And I think definitely during COVID-19, we've really seen, I think, how much that is true. And we had all of our students learning remotely for a period of time. We were surprised how many students still struggle with home internet access and access to even internet, their local library, local high school, you name it. So it's not an easy problem to solve. I think having kind of regional partners, I think one of the benefits I think we tap into are our partner schools in higher education to provide like regional power in terms of offering those types of resources, whether it be students coming to those campuses, whether it be even just providing internet access if they want to come sit out in the parking lot. But trying to level that inequity of technology is really hard. And at some level, I think it's gonna take some motivation at a higher level than just the state level to kind of get that broadband out where it needs to be, so students have access to all these great resources and computing power. If they can't afford to have their own great MacBook sitting on their desk, they still need to have access to the tools that help them get the job done.
And maybe another way to tackle this question also is, imagine school, or the students in the school aren't getting to calculus or data science, right? They're still, on Algebra 1, and maybe they don't have teachers to be teaching data science electives or the AP Calc elective. Would you all have thoughts on how we, incorporate data science earlier, whether it's freshman year in high school or if it's middle school?
We know that the data science possibilities inside the current mathematics standards are very limited. We've been looking at this as I work on the California Maths Framework, and we've put out a data science sort of plan K-12, and really uplighting anything that's even potentially data science like in the Common Core Maths Framework. But really we've got to change and bring more data awareness and data analysis into those earlier years. I think it's really important. Can be done. There's actually the elementary teachers are doing a pretty good job of having their kids work with data, but then it really dips in middle school and into high school even further. So it just speaks to the need for this campaign, if you like, to have a broader impact on teachers across the K-12 system.
Yeah, and again, I'd refer to people to the K-12 report, which just kind of try and tackle some of that issue as well. And I know Joe's group is working on trying to what we call activate, trying to create lessons that make those recommendations viable. So, but I agree. I mean, I think it's just starting kindergarten. I think especially in the middle schools, this may be an area where teachers outside of math play a role, where we can integrate more in social studies and humanities as well. So, but I think, again, it's back to technology. The key will be, how do we integrate technology and computational thinking into that practice at an early age, when we know that especially elementary schools tend to not have the same technology infrastructures as high schools.
I've been working actually with some elementary schools in different regions in California that have had school-wide data projects, which are really lovely, where the students are given data challenges in all the classrooms across all the grades, and the teachers work together in creating them. And I think that's fantastic when schools are doing things like that.
Awesome. Great. Okay, I'm going to switch gears a little bit because Karen had a question on assessment in data science coursework, especially if I'm a K-12 teacher, looking to implement a data science course. How should I be thinking about the logistics of, how do I assess my students? How do I grade them? What resources are out there that they can draw upon?
I mean, assessment and grading of project-based work is really the work the students do. We don't need to have separate tests to see what students can do. If they're developing a portfolio over the course of their course, then that's a lovely form of assessment. So that's what I would say. We need no tests are needed for assessing data science.
Yeah, I'll go ahead, Taylor. Sorry.
I was just going to say, I think there's two parts of the assessment. I think potentially math teachers, if it's going to land in a math department, are more maybe accustomed to kind of assessment of skills and maybe short explanations, but maybe are a little bit less experienced with kind of what I would call the squishy parts of data science, where it's a little bit harder to define. And I think you want to ask those squishy questions, because I think as we probably all know, like, it's not just about crunching out a number or doing the right data shaping on your table. Like, you have to be able to answer some real world questions, and real world questions often have messy answers. And I think setting that expectation in your assessment, that I'm not looking for the number 7 down at the bottom of your paper. I'm looking for an explanation on process, and I want to know, what does that number 7 mean? Like, put it in context. Is that good? Is that bad? And I think that has to be an assessment. And I think you can model that in classroom activities and conversations, but it's hard to assess. I can speak really well, like that's what we should be doing. I think I'd be lying if I said if I do a great job at it. I'm trying to get better, but it's hard to come up with those good questions where students can really thrive in that uncertainty.
So what I'd add to that, I guess, is like Joe. I mean, for our summative assessment, we rely strongly on projects. And so, the curriculum provides rubrics, and the teachers have modified these rubrics and continue to modify them. For summative, for formative, the day-to-day sort of stuff, I mean, every lesson we have some sort of assessment built in. So when teachers are leading discussions, or when there's an activity and students post posters around the room, the teachers have some outcomes in mind that they can evaluate those against and kind of lead things moving forward. And that's kind of taking the place of some professional development, because again, this is an area that the first couple of years, teachers don't really know what to look for in assessment. So we are trying to guide them within the curriculum and also at the PD. So there's a PD importance again. The last thing I will add, though, is I still think there's a real need for assessment in the sense of a research tool. So we need to be able to measure what it is students are learning and how they're making progress. And, we have tests for statistical acumen and computer science thinking and math thinking. We don't have anything for the synthesis of those three that's data science. So there's a ways to go there still.
Great. Well, definitely lots more work to be done. But I think this panel and all of the work that you all have done to date just go to show how much momentum and energy there is for this for adopting data science in high school. And I think there's a lot of great success to come. We're almost out of time. We have about 2 minutes left. I know there were a number of questions on how, either from teachers or other folks on reaching out to you all individually about your curriculums and programs and how they can get in touch with you for professional development or for adopting curriculum in a school or district. So if you all could share your contact information in the chat, I think that'd be really useful for folks. I think Eric or other organizers from Data 8 could share that out after the session as well. Also, anyone
asked for our slides, Zarek? Sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah,
I don't know if there's a way of sending things to the people in this group. Maybe just by reaching out to us. I guess that can work.
Yeah, I think that folks on the Data 8 team can help facilitate that. And also, if Eric or others, if you have thoughts on who's best to reach for questions around Data 8 adoption, in addition to Taylor and his experience as a practitioner, I think that would also be really helpful.
Yeah, we can put the slides on the website. I'm happy with that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Great. Yep. Happy to dshelp@berkeley.edu. We welcome all comers, take all calls. We will also try to work on our PD. I've already been asked by a couple of people based on Monday, like, can you do a separate session for high school teachers? So we'll work on that and reach out to this network. But thanks for so much engagement. This is like the most exciting. The chat and the Q&A has been like the whole workshop. There's like so many great people writing in.
Teachers.